Hi, everyone. Just wanted to speak about Thursday's video. As you see, if you've already known, I was on The Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack, which is what you can see on the screen share right there. Um, and I just want to talk about my experiences and what I thought about it. Definitely have a lot of opinions. Um, Well, just to go over, if you watched the full episode and we were introducing our projects, I had the unfortunate honor of being the last one with less than 30 seconds before we wrapped. So I didn't really get to talk a lot about myself. And this video is more of a reintroduction to what I do and who I am. So for people who have subscribed and have followed me in the last couple of days, thank you. I really do appreciate it. So my name is Antonio Earl of Words. Earl of Words being Earl is a nice pun on my middle name. And of Words is I'm a writer, and Earl means a nobleman. So I try to be as, I guess you could say noble in the words that I say. But of course, given this world of, people being hypocrites and crap like that and not being politically correct, that's not really going to happen. So that's what I think, Earl of Words provides for my name and my artist name or whatever. Um, I am Black and Latino. So my mother is a El Salvadorian immigrant, came here as a result of being displaced as a result of the Salvadoran Civil War that was primarily brought on by U.S. intervention. My father is Black, and he is from Tennessee, Memphis. Shout out to Memphis 10. And those two cultures influenced a lot of the way that I lived. Of course, phenotypically in this country, I am Black. And I feel just as equal of being Black, being indigenous, coming from my Salvadoran side of Linca. And of course, people say mestizo, but when people say mestizo, they're really talking about, representing the Spanish side of them, but not the indigenous side. And to a much other extent, the Afro Salvadoran presence. But yeah, I have a blog, Earl of Words, WordPress.com. I have an Instagram. I have this YouTube, and I have a Twitter. You were probably led here by the little link tree that I put out somewhere. And basically what I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I love to write short stories, more in the science fiction and horror genre. I'm working on some short stories right now. I'm working on a first book of poetry that I hope to get out by the spring called The Houseman. It's based on my experiences in living in Los Angeles for the last 12 years. I no longer live in LA. I live on the East Coast again. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I was just born there. I was raised outside of it in Northern Virginia. And going back to the book, I was in hospitality, and it was there working alongside being part of the working class that made me realize, the income inequalities, the structural racism, the institutional racism that existed, not just in hospitality, but it became a microcosm for a lot of the stuff that I ended up writing about. So on my Instagram, I started writing small little poems. And if you go to my IG, I have the link, we'll have the link down below for you. You'll see throughout the years I've written small things, whether they be a little long or short, whatever comes to my mind. I'm very passionate about Black empowerment, what Black liberation means, what brown liberation means, what indigenous struggle means, all around class struggle. A socialist, and I just try to be a student of life as much as I can. So if you were led here and you were greatly touched by my words as someone who is a work in progress but is progressively working, thank you for stopping by. Now, to get to the topic at hand, as you see on the screensaver, screen sharing, I was on the Fox Soul Show the other day, and being in this, we don't really have time to really, talk about the root causes of things because, we're on a major network. They have a moderator that has to keep the flow going. So like just when you feel like you're getting into a groove, all of a sudden it just goes and it doesn't work out very well. And shout out to Dr. Jared Ball. And for me, in my experience, I am just, I don't have much to my name. So when I got approached to do this show, I was absolutely shocked. And, I didn't know all of these people were going to be on the panel until we were about to go up. And so I was just so amazed, especially by Dr. Jared Ball, because I have been following his work for the last 2 years. I read the book, The Myth of Black Buying Power, and I suggest everyone go read it because it really dispels the myth of understanding that we're not really, I guess you could say, we're not really as, powerful in the Black financial sector, because it's been perpetuated that we have this potential of buying power, when in reality, the power that we really lack to make significant change is policy and political power. And I think, I have to agree with Dr. Ball by saying that that's what it's always been, for us for decades. We've achieved most of our significant policy and political changes by not really depending on any form of financial literacy. And even that term in itself is like, for me, I said in this show that economic power has a slight edge over political power. And to kind of emphasize more on that and to elaborate more on that, basically, economic power, i.e. money, drives the political system today. You cannot be really anywhere without money, whether it's, big money donations from corporations, lobbyists, sponsoring your re-elections, or even small dollar donations. This is not to downplay working class people not giving money to some hard-earned candidate. And shout out to Councilman Khalil, who did a fantastic job on this panel as well. But the point is that money is king and capital is king. And if you don't have any form of it, you are going to suffer significantly. And of course, that comes to this other point of understanding financial literacy, which I believe Ross Mack was really trying to emphasize. And Ross Mack is the one with the black hoodie. The thing is that I don't think that we are financially illiterate. I think that we are very aware of how things go. We may not understand the technical terms, but we know what or what not to do. And I don't think it's just us. I think it's just in general, the people of the working class are purposefully not aware of understanding how the financial and banking systems work. And just because they don't know doesn't mean that they are not deserving of not just help in a financial sense, but more of a radical education in the educational sense, and understanding that it's not just about money, that it is about movement building. If you're trying to build a business and you want that business to kind of contribute to maybe building, I don't know, mutual aid networks in the time of a general strike, or creating some sort of political power, or some sort of, policy, pushing, then I understand that. But ultimately, independent financial literacy is not going to be the be all end all for our prosperity, because like Dr. Ball said in this video, if white people can't even get that, so why are we trying to emulate something that white people have, that white people cannot achieve? Most white people cannot achieve, except for the likes of a very few. And to piggyback more on Dr. Ball's thing, and I think it's more because Black Americans, us, we have a very small sense of who we are as people culturally. And, it's not our fault, because our identities were stripped from us when we were abducted from West Africa and brought here to the shores of the United States, which is indigenous land, stolen indigenous land. And we were forced to work for free and build the capital for rich, wealthy white males. And so when we finally do achieve our freedom in 1865 and we do achieve a sense of economic empowerment, we think that, the 40 acres and a mule and building ourselves up and by our feet and by our bootstraps, we start emulating the bootstraps theory. And all of a sudden, we start realizing that we don't get undermined by our own inability to work collectively, because I think that's something that was inherent in all of us. Like Councilman Khalil said, that Black people are socialists. We like to work collectively as a unit. The whole saying, the proverb, I believe, it takes a village to raise a child. We really, really take that to heart in different forms. But the general consensus is the same. We try to help each other out as much as we can. So I believe that concept has been taken and compartmentalized into this financial literacy bubble, and believing that capital is going to get you out of your problems, a pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality that I don't think is effective in the long run, because ultimately, in order to become a successful capitalist, you have to exploit your workers, which goes to my next point. If you do not exploit your workers, you are not being successful, because ultimately you are taking the profits from the labor, even though your workers definitely worked harder than you. And I think most of us on here that's watching right now have worked for a business of which that you worked incredibly hard, but felt that the wages that you were earning and the hours you were getting were not reflective of the amount of work that you put in, while you saw the owner of the business go in, look around, do some shit, and then walk away. We've all been there. And that's basically the template of how capitalist economies are created, whether it's a small business all the way up to the large corporation. And so in the case of Black people, we think that because we see these stories of Black Wall Street, of successful Black people that reached the billionaires club, that somehow the common working class worker can achieve that too. And I think that's part of the mythology. If we can do it, so can you. And you have a chance if you just work hard. Well, many people have worked hard throughout decades and decades and decades, and they still are in the same place. They're still in that hamster wheel, and they have this drive, but they've had numerous amounts of bad luck. And if they do get to a certain place, seldom have they reached it based off of the exploitation of somebody else to get there. So that's important to understand when you are participating in this system. Probably, as we all are thinking, so what do you do to make something better for that? Well, for one, I think the consensus throughout all five of us is that we all had a critique of capitalism, that to only find someone who is staunchly pro-capitalist is someone that is successful enough to reap the profits off of their workers. So the general consensus is that Black capitalism does not work, just like the way capitalism does not work for the working class. And the only types of people that it works for are the wealthy elites and the billionaires who hoard wealth. And even that odd upper middle class that don't feel rich, but still are rich and still are mad that they have to be in the highest tax bracket, it benefits them. And so it's just hard for us to really understand the damage that it has done to working class people and the lack of economic and political mobility that cannot be achieved without strong policy that favors the working class and political power that is built outside of the electoral spectrum. Going down to voting is more of a distraction. A lot of policy changes have happened by disrupting the social order. The civil rights movement was not achieved by voting. The abolition of slavery was not achieved by voting. The Black Lives Matter movement and The protests that happened last summer as a result of the murder of George Floyd did not happen by voting. But yet voting is used as the ultimate weapon for your democracy, for your voice to be heard in this democracy. Yet when we see the economic and the financial power many of these lobbyists and hedge funders and uber wealthy billionaires have over our politicians, suddenly you start to feel like your vote doesn't count. And then the counterpoint is, well, if they didn't like your vote, if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't stop at all means to do so. That's only a very small thing. Like, that's kind of like the cherry on top of little of oppression. Like, boop, of course we're going to suppress your vote, duh. But what we're also going to do is we also already have policies that prevent you from getting free healthcare, that prevent you from getting a living wage, that prevent you from even getting upward mobility, so you can really, really feel stable in a in your financial standing. So the voting oppression is just a small tip of the iceberg. I think voting is significant in more local elections than national. So those are worth focusing on more, but ultimately, even those are corrupted by money. So that's important to understand. But yeah, so as far as, capitalism is concerned, Black capitalism is just just because Black capitalism doesn't exist, exists doesn't mean it's going to be better than capitalism, than the white capitalism. Like, that's bullshit. That's all part of the same thing. It's a microcosm of a much larger problem. And so we need to have these discussions that steer away from the distraction of becoming financially literate and, because we already have that within us. It's more about the lack of political power, our lack of understanding how our policies affect countries around the world with the extraction of resources, the outsourcing of jobs. We need to understand that those ideas and those perspectives are at play, and as much as we want to believe that buying back the block and feeling like we can be like Jay-Z or Tyler Perry or Oprah Winfrey or Kanye West, we will never be them. We will never be them because it is not imperative. It is imperative for them to not see more people like us. And by us, I don't just mean Black people. I mean the whole entire working class, to reach those upper hierarchies, of which won't really happen because you have to exploit the worker and keep the worker working. And the way you keep the worker working is by believing in this dream, which I guess since we live in the United States is the American dream, that if you work hard, you will go rags to riches, and we'll all just regurgitate a bunch of Horatio Alger myths. And so therefore, if somebody says, you know what, there's a systemic problem, there's a policy problem, they're going to sit there and say, well, I didn't let that stop me. Why are you letting it stop you? And one other thing, a lot of people don't have the drive to do certain things. That's fine. We understand this. But at the same time, though, there are those people who are not driven because they know that the system has failed them, but they just don't know if they have the courage to believe in a system bigger than themselves and to feel like they are part of something, because we are living in an individualist society where it's more for me, less for you. Fuck you if you don't like it. And excuse my language. So just to put some perspective on things, I definitely feel that this conversation could have gone way more in depth, way more deeper. But I believe that if more of these discussions happen on media that is not necessarily on the mainstream, they will become more in depth. Yeah, so that's what I got for everybody. I hope that everybody enjoyed the discussion. If you have any questions for me, I will be more than happy to answer them. And I thank you for watching, and I hope I hope I get a chance to speak again, even though we all know what happened. Oh, yeah. Oh my God, I forgot. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video. We went through almost the entire taping, and the production team messed up on filming us. So we were in the middle of this long segment and everything was fine. And then we got cut. And then it was discovered that the footage was not good enough to continue. So we had to refilm an entire segment again. And that was rough. That was really rough because when we're all in our moments and we're trying to exert an emotion, we all are trying really, really, really hard. And you can't emulate that again. You know what I'm saying? You can't emulate that again unless you're like an actor reading a script. You know, and even that, it's hard to do that in the moment. So, you know, towards the end, I felt like I lagged a little bit, and I'm sure the energy in the room was kind of sapped out. So that's just what happens when you're dealing with live TV or live streaming or whatever. Shit like that happens. So it is what it is. You know, we all have something to say. This conversation went a lot better than I thought it would have. Because I thought I was like the only anti-capitalist in the room, but so to speak, some people are, you know, we all had a criticism of capitalism and Black capitalism. So it was nice to know that everybody knew that there was a problem. But the question is, are people aware of true solutions to get out of it? And if that even involves capitalism, which in my personal opinion does not. All right, so that's all I have. Thank you for stopping by. I promise I will have more videos for you in the upcoming days. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, ranging from, I don't know, the infrastructure bill to the Luma protests in Puerto Rico. I mean, I will try as much as I can to talk to all of you with my true and personal opinion. And I hope I did good for somebody who was on this streaming thing for the first time. As time goes, you will see more and more of my energy. And I promise you, you will get the best perspectives. I'll put more posts on my blog, more posts on my IG. Thank you for supporting me. If you reached this point in the video, maybe you turned it off, but if you didn't, thank you. All the best to you. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I will see you next time.